All right. Hello, I'm Jason Pamental. I'm a principal designer at Chewy. Been around Drupal for a long time. I've worked and know many of you from that world. A lot of you, or some of you, may know me as somebody who talks a lot about web typography. I'm also not going to talk about that either. I am going to talk about things that have been kind of pretty interesting to me for a little while now, and that is curiosity and its role in design or development. Honestly, you could substitute either one. I don't think it really matters. So I work at Chewy. I love dogs. That's Henry. That's Leo. It's a little bit of an older picture, but that head tilt was kind of perfect for this. And the reason I want to talk to you about curiosity, hi, come on in.
Sorry to join your presentation.
That's okay. We're going to talk about what curiosity is. I'm going to share some stories from some other designers about what role it plays in their work and what it means to them, and how this relates to what you do. So those are kind of the three things that we're going to talk about today. But coming back to this word, curiosity, it's something that's been a part of my sort of consciousness and identity for much of my life. And do you have a question?
Very yeah, it's not Latin, it's Greek.
Thank you. Copy and paste, and I don't know Greek or Latin, so I guess I've been called out. Okay, so curiosity. Why is it something that I care about? Why is it something that's been a big part of my life? Well, it's because of this guy. This is my dad. He passed away about a year and a half ago. And he was someone that, to me, really kind of made this part of my life. And it was by example. So my dad is actually pictured here playing the guitar at a memorial for my uncle. My dad taught himself to play the guitar in order to be able to play with Carl at family get-togethers. So he figured it out. And this was long before YouTube and everything else. He just figured it out. He wanted to make things, so he taught himself woodworking. From little sculptural things to salt and pepper shakers and cutting boards to a beautiful sideboard secretary cabinet in my mom's apartment now. He also was a teacher. He taught advertising and then marketing and management. And when he was studying management and learning more for himself about that, he was on a trip to Japan. And as he was spending more and more time in Japan looking at, he was there to study management techniques. So he was meeting with executives from different manufacturing companies, and he just got to know more and more about the people. And as he got to know more and more about the people, he started to understand a little bit more about the society there. And he started to become really fascinated by the role of women in Japan in that society. And so he started to make courses there about that. And instead of people lining up at the door to learn from my dad about marketing, these classes filled up every semester. It was born out of his curiosity and his passion, and it resonated with his students, and it was by far the most successful things that he ever taught, and that was absolutely born out of his curiosity. And when he passed, I started to have some conversations with my brother, and we were talking about that. And my brother is a philosophy professor. He teaches philosophy at University of Tennessee, and he was telling me how he was incorporating curiosity into his curriculum. And I thought that was really interesting, because it's been part of my Twitter bio, my everything. Like I'm always curious about stuff. I'm always learning new things. And he was relating this back to the philosophical virtues, and this is one of the sort of 9 core virtues that they'll teach in philosophy classes. And they are really central to inquiry. And so curiosity is that root of inquiry, and my brother wanted to figure out if that was something that he could teach his students. And as we talked more and more about it, a virtue is sort of it's something that you teach yourself how to do, where you learn more about it. It's something almost, it's an experience or a skill, but in other ways, curiosity can almost be thought of as an emotion. It's a really weird thing. It's very hard to pin down and define, and that's really what made this such a fascinating topic. It felt to me, in the way he was talking about it, it was more of a tool for his course than the subject of it. But that didn't really feel like it was a whole picture. So what is it? And I started to look a little bit more into this. And Cicero had this to say about it. He probably wrote it in Latin, I'm guessing. But our innate love of learning, I thought that was pretty interesting. But this was another one that I came across from a professor at University of South Carolina. This being unhappy, not understanding something, and I related to that, but not discouraged by it. Not knowing about something is an opportunity, and I think that's what is really kind of interesting. So. This was really one of my favorites by way of a British writer, but paraphrasing Aristotle, this aimless, witless tendency to pry into things that don't concern you. So I just thought that was really pretty wonderful. But all of these things, they scratch the surface, and we have these other ways we use the word, like what kind of curiosity it is. And I'm going to come back to Doug Wilson. This is a screenshot of stuff that he collected about the linotype machine. He's one of the people that I talked about. And I think that the answer for him is no. There is no such thing as too much material about the linotype. And if you want to ask him about it, just clear your calendar. It's what you're going to be on for a while. Or Henry's explorations of how much toilet paper he could eat. And that should be left rhetorical, and he's lucky he wasn't one of those pandemic puppies, because that would have been a real crisis. Or his other favorite thing to chew on is how many of these do we have gathered on the back shelf in our hallway that mostly have no face. So, different ways to use the word curiosity, but maybe not any closer at understanding what it really means. These are just descriptions. And then the most scientific thing that I came across was this, which really boils down to, in the subject of this intensely researched and well-documented paper, we don't know. I mean, that's really how it boiled down. So, to me, what does it mean to me? We're bringing this back a little bit to my life as a designer and other pursuits over the course of my life. It's something that it can be formed. It can be practiced, it can be nurtured, it can be fanned. All of those adjectives you could say, I want to nurture that curiosity. I want to fan this flame. And I think those are interesting ways to think about it. And so now, to relate this a bit more to design, I thought I'd ask some people. Because as I started writing this talk, I was talking to my wife about it, and she was reading the outline that I had, and she said, maybe it'd be interesting if you asked someone else, which I tried not to take too personally, because it turns out that it was a really good idea. So I asked my friend Brian, somebody that I've been riding bicycles with for many years, but he was also he was the head of the architecture and grad school programs at Rhode Island School of Design. He was a VP there. He also helped found an agency called Avalanche back in the 90s, which was an enormously popular and well-established interactive agency that went on to be acquired by Razorfish. But he's just also someone that always has a story about something. There is never a point in Brian's life that he's not seeing something. His curiosity is piqued, he learns about it, it becomes another thing that is sort of part of his repertoire of stories that I usually retell in my ride titles on Strava. And one of the things that he said, and this was a bit more of an academic argument on his part, but that it's shallow. That curiosity is the thing that leads you to graze across subjects, but it is that academic rigor and discipline that brings true knowledge and understanding. And then he finished that line by saying he's not sure that he believes that argument, But that's kind of where he was going at it from an academic point of view. But this is from someone who is a licensed architect, a designer, a polymath, and is now taking up pottery. So I'm not sure that I believe him either. That's another guy. So Eric Spiekermann is a very established and well-known writer about typography, a type designer, a graphic designer, really interesting and kind of ornery guy, but I've always gotten along with him really well. But his book, Stop Stealing Sheep, was the first book that I ever purchased about typography when I was in school studying graphic design. And so he really has been kind of instrumental in my learning about the history of type and typography and how to use it well. And so I sat down with him to ask him what it means to him. And he had this great response. Nugia is the, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but the greed for the new is sort of a literal translation from German. And it really sort of puts that word greed in a really wonderful light. It's just this insatiable desire to acquire more knowledge. And one would hope for very good reasons. But that's just been a part of his life. So his response when I asked if this was important was, he thinks it's a prerequisite. It's this something that's totally central and his main motivator in what he does. And he's done many interesting things over the years. But this particular story really struck me. He was, this is going back to, I think, the late 70s or early 80s. He was working as a designer embedded at a bank, working on a brand identity. And he was embedded with the marketing team. But every day, because he was embedded there, like it wasn't remote Zoom calls at that point, he was sitting in an office. So he would ride the lift down to the canteen to get lunch, and he would talk to people. And that was really central to it. He would start to talk to all these people that he would meet to really get an understanding of the brand by understanding the people that work there in all different aspects, not just the marketing message they want to put out, but what is that fabric, that DNA of the culture of a company? You find that by talking to people, by asking questions, by meeting people that wouldn't normally come into your view. And so making those connections is what fed into his understanding of that company and the creation of a successful brand. Now someone else, now Curiosity was absolutely in the very heart of how Eric thinks about himself and about his work. David is the complete opposite. David is a wonderful type designer. He actually lives out in Western Mass. He's somebody that I met at a type conference back in 2016, and he was one of the first type designers to really embrace and start to play with variable fonts. That was where they were introduced, at A-Type I in Warsaw in 2016. He was one of the first type designers to be creating those variable fonts at that time. And so, because I was also doing a lot of work in that space, as soon as it was introduced, to speak about them, write about them, research them, did consulting for all the browsers and implementation and all of that. So I would go back to David for typefaces all the time. And so his idea, when I asked him this question, was that he didn't really think of himself as a curious person. He simply sets up his practice to allow that space to explore. So he didn't use the word, but the outcome was absolutely there in what he was saying and what he was doing. So, and what I loved about the conversation was he never used that word, but it came through so clearly. Mac wanted to do some updates on the system. I thought now is not a good time. So that was kind of his response. And in doing that, and what he was trying to get at, and what you can see in the background there is something called Font of the Month Club. So he did commercial type design, but he wanted this space to explore. So he came up with this idea of, what if I offered something where I'm going to send you a font every month for $6. And he started this thing, and it became quite popular, and he has kept it up for several years now, and I have this huge collection of fonts, and many of them have gone on to become larger families, and this is actually one of them. So Warbler is this typeface that he had created, and I had a few different weights here and there from the Font of the Month Club, but it's really pretty, it's beautiful, it's a wonderful typeface, and based on his explorations, I thought that it would be a great one for me to use for this talk, because one, this is all in HTML and CSS, and that is one typeface file. And that's what I think is so fascinating about variable fonts. So the fact that it's thick and thin, the fact that it works at large and small sizes, the fact that there's italic and upright, that can all actually be contained in this one file. But honestly, he's not being curious at all, really. Instead, he wanted to test this out. He actually set it as his default in a user style sheet and would browse websites all day long and read email in it. And then he would have the font application open, and he'd be tweaking things and refreshing it and going back and forth between the type design program and his applications. So there was an intense curiosity in how could I make this thing work for the broadest set of scenarios by making all of these little adjustments and putting it into practice day after day after day. And so that's something that I thought was really fantastic and just a wonderful way of expressing what curiosity means to him and how it impacts his life and his work, whether or not you ever put that word in your vocabulary. Now, I mentioned Doug Wilson earlier. I met Doug when I actually found out about this movie that he made about the linotype machine, and arranged to have a screening in Providence and brought him up. And that was in maybe 2013 or something like that. And we've been really good friends ever since. Type and cycling, if you really want to know the through line of all the people that I hang out with, that's kind of it right there. But he's just someone that embodies that word, and in a way that I think was really kind of wonderful. He's just found this one thing. He studied graphic design. He has worked for Monotype at various points. He's there full time now, so it's very much in the font world. But this weird machine that powered the production of most newspapers worldwide for decades, this weird Rube Goldberg thing that melts metal and prints type over and over and over again during the course of the day. It's just this fantastic thing. It really kind of absorbed what he was doing, but that just came out of one random lecture when he was in school, and then finding something later on, and then something else, and then something else. And this is what I think was so important, was that whether or not it was a concept that was brought to him by his parents consciously, it's something that he learned to trust. That this curiosity, this drive for him to understand something, he would lead him somewhere interesting, and just let it happen. And so it went from an article to a movie to now working on a book to, the places I hang out with him are mostly in like other countries and continents, because it takes him, talking about this takes him all over the world. And that's pretty wonderful. And at this, in case you were wondering exactly how deeply this impacts him, I just thought this was, this could be the cover of the book, whatever I'm going to do with this curiosity thing. I agree with him wholeheartedly. So bringing it back, this to me, it's a word that I probably used at some point in conversations with at least two people in this room that I have worked with. It is the trait that I hire designers on. It is, I think, the most central thing to what will make you successful as a designer or developer, either one. I spent 20 years running teams, and I've never not factored that into my decision to make a hire with somebody, because I care about what you will know tomorrow. because we all have some amount of knowledge today, but we also know that this industry does not stand still. And if you don't have some way you learn, that's really what I want to hear from you is, how do you acquire knowledge? Because if you can't solve a problem today, I need you to solve it tomorrow. How are you going to do that? And so if I ask somebody during an interview, what's your favorite author, your favorite podcast, do you like videos? Do you like reading books? Like, what's your go-to? I don't care what the answer is, other than I don't know. Like, if you can't answer it, then, I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say the interview's over, but you've certainly put yourself in a bit of a hole. I'll be totally honest. Now, bear in mind, I don't hire anybody now. I just work at Chewy. I'm a designer. I just do my thing. I'm not managing. But I still think it's super important because what I can tell you is that my entire life, when I was 7, I didn't know how to take my bike apart, but when I was 8, I did, and that has stuck with me. When I was 31, I didn't know how to restore an old car. By the time I was 32, I did. It was just something that was interesting to me, so I dug into it. When I was 37, I did not expect to become an expert in web typography that was published and hired to go speak about these things by the time I was 38. So those things were all stemming from a desire to understand something that as yet I did not. And so all of these things, these challenges, it is a practice. And this is why I wanted to bring this back to you, and almost doing this on time, is that curiosity is something that you can create in yourself. You can work on it. You probably had it if you don't now, and I'm not saying that anybody does or doesn't, but most children are innately curious. I think that that's something that people can agree upon. But it's also something, it just has no gate. Anyone can be curious. Anyone can start by asking one question. And after that, ask another one. And see what comes from there. And the questions you get, and when you're thinking about those answers and those underlying reasons, that's the thing that sparks your ideation, and that is what leads to creativity. And that is what's going to help you grow as a designer. It's not a big stroke of genius. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale. You can try just writing one thing a week and learn something from that. I did that for a little over a year with a web typography newsletter and easily rewrote my book that way. I wanted to try to keep up with things, so I would get these email newsletters from Medium, and I would try and pick something to go read every day. Mostly successful. I also, some people have already commented today, people that I've known for a while, about my photos every morning. That's something that I post from my dog walks every day at this really wonderful spot, usually right around the time the sun's coming up. And so the challenge to myself is to make a small piece of art. It may be very consistently about a couple of dogs, but I'm trying to think about composition, I'm trying to think about light, I'm trying to do these things that keep my brain active, and I try and produce something that's worth posting somewhere. It's not bad or good. So you're either, it's not that there's good curiosity and bad curiosity, it's just whether or not you're going to do something with it. You can be curious and still be an ineffective designer. You can be a successful designer and not be particularly curious, but I think it would be limiting, personally. But it's the practice of curiosity that leads to growth. And with growth is the potential to be better at whatever it is that you are undertaking. So it's a continuum. It's something that is yours to use and to develop. It's something that can permeate everything in your life. Just by asking this question, could I understand this better? That helps you with working with other people too. Because quite often somebody has a different point of view or a different way of processing information, and if you don't stop to think about that, maybe you could be a more effective communicator. So there's always opportunities there. And with that growth comes agency. So with this growth, with this ability, with this increase in the proficiency and the quality of the work that you're doing, that gives you opportunity. Because when you can demonstrate that, and that's what people see in your work, that's what they want on their team. So just to be perfectly mercenary about it, bring it right back to that next job interview, being able to go in and talk about why you did something in a certain way and how you might think about approaching it the next time because of this other thing that you saw. Those are the conversations that get the attention of someone who leads a team and wants that team to do great work. So keep that in mind. It's also something for us to share. So when you are curious and you're the one on the other side of that table leading the team or leading the critique, that curiosity is going to lead you to ask questions of the designer who produced that work. For the designer who is presenting, it's going to give them a fresh perspective and things that they may or may not have thought about. So those questions are really important and part of that process of making the work better. It's also a driver of innovation. So if you don't know how to do something and you want to figure it out, you're going to start to ask more questions. And so just to steal the title, The Art of Looking Sideways from Alan Fletcher, it is about seeing oblique connections that might not otherwise be obvious. And it's by asking those questions and looking around the room. I think it's something that designers and folks that work on the web in particular are really used to, having to do that. So that's a feature, not a bug. Think about it that way. So it's not ever done. And I know completely over time, hopefully you don't mind. You're not running out the door, so I guess that's all right. It's not, for some people, the curiosity is over once they've acquired the knowledge and they've filled that gap. But to me, I think it's never truly done, because I might learn a lot about making the perfect cup of coffee, but how will I ever know it's perfect? I'm just going to keep trying new things and practicing that. And I can tell you it has made our morning routine a lot nicer. That's pretty good. I might not know how to typeset a perfect page for every reader in every context, but I can learn something new and share it, and then maybe a few more people are going to advance those ideas and improve typography on the web or anywhere else. And I might not give the perfect conference talk, but I know that when I give it tomorrow, it will be better for the chance of having given it today. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer questions or anything else. I know we're kind of running into the break. I think I might have used your entire break. Sorry. But I'm here, and I'll be around after, too. Thank you.